Yeah, nice to meet you. I'm happy you're here. Best you introduce yourself and who you are, where you come from.
Yeah, for me, this is always like, who am I? Like for most people, who am I is always something material. It's always something like what do I do, or But the question is, like, who am I? That's a metaphysical, spiritual question for me. That is the question I've been researching my whole life. In the world, I have a nationality and I belong to a country and I live on a planet, but actually I feel through my understanding that I'm actually a universal being and I'm a citizen of the galaxy, or a citizen of the universe.
No, I just asked because people just want to get a general idea, who is it? Basically, who is it in society, basically?
I've been around the world and in search of, mystical knowledge, and went to many cultures and societies. And a lot of times people would say, like, where are you from? And I would say, like, where's the sky from?
Yeah.
Does a bird require a passport? Is a tree Swiss or American? So fundamentally, that's what I've arrived at, and that I do have all these things like papers and things like that, and to me they're like operating systems. You have Macintosh, you have Linux, you have Windows, you have Swiss nationality, you have American nationality, you have Ukrainian nationality, you have Russian nationality. They're all different systems, but they're all an overlay on the reality of what we really are that we've forgotten over the millennia, and we're just rediscovering that.
Yeah. So you don't identify with nations and.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was born in one country. I have the citizen of another country, and I grew up in another country, right? And so every 10 years, I have to renew my passport. And if I forget to renew my passport, I actually become a stateless citizen. I have no state. And so in order to operate in this world, you need a state. You need a place that you belong to, because then you have an embassy that works for you or protects you. And I even said one point, because I don't really identify with any particular country, I asked if I could get a United Nations passport, because I identify more as a global citizen, as a world citizen, but that's not possible unless I work for the United Nations. Yeah.
Well, I have a passport and I'm stateless,
Yeah.
So Germany, Billy wrote that in one of the latest contact reports,
Mm-hmm.
And I thanked him afterwards that he actually said that, because very few are aware of that, How would you see yourself as a citizen of the world or just a being in the universe?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a citizen of the creation itself, and that my history on this earth is also a history in the creation. And so therefore, I look at it as a longer-term perspective on things. I don't see it as, my rent, my this, my that. I see it as how I live and what my life is, in a sense, because I know I have a history in the creation itself, not necessarily just on the planet. And that whatever I do will also be part of the history of the creation forever. And so through the process of living, I've been waking up to what that is. And through meditation especially, I've been deepening my connection to it, my alignment with it.
Yeah, so yeah. You don't just see your present life, but that there are many lives.
I don't know about past lives because I don't have a machine. Every now and then I glimpse something and I think something, but I don't know if that's reality or not. It sounds good because I can give you theories on what might have happened in my life with certain people and how it might be connected to a past life. But I have no idea, because it's not like I have that's always what's fascinated me about the Pleiadians, because somehow they have an ability to go back into the past and see things from the past. And I think that's interesting. How do you do that,
Yeah, that's very advanced technology, and we will be able to do that at some point in the future. So some UFOs are actually us from the future, but it's hard to say, And I told Billy that we in the future have learned something because they don't interfere. So far they haven't interfered with our affairs. Because Billy says that would be bad, if you go in the past and then say, hey, we are from the future and this is how it will be, and so us from the future have learned not to interfere with the past, because it's not going to change their present. If they go back, it isn't changed, or even worse, actually. Things have the tendency to be worse, actually,
But yet, you see, while I'm alive in this lifetime, somehow I feel like I'm from the future, because how I think and how I am is not necessarily the same as everyone else, because as you meditate and you begin to progress your spirituality or your awareness, you begin to see and understand things that the collective consciousness hasn't quite arrived at, in a way. And so then you kind of become a harbinger or a vehicle to transmit this type of knowledge or these kinds of ideas.
Yeah. I think you described something about the future where it kind of clicked for me when I saw Star Wars, and it describes their world, and then or it says in the beginning, like, this is from the past, But for us, it's like technology far in the future, So, but in the movie, it was actually something that happened a long time ago,
yeah.
And I thought, well, yeah, that's a really cool idea, and that it's like they're high tech, and then it kind of is all destroyed again, and then civilizations build it up again, and then they destroy it, so that it's very, very difficult to keep peace, I mean, not even to live in harmony, but just to live in peace. Civilizations don't manage that,
When you begin to explore all of this knowledge from the past and mysticism and the Ice Age and then before the Ice Age, and you see all these structures around the world, and there's almost no clues except a bunch of structures. There must have been a great catastrophe, what that destroyed everything, because our history only goes back a few thousand years. We can't remember much before that, So, and I've thought about it, like Europe had glaciers that were several, kilometer high on it. And that civilization is always kind of near the ocean or near the water. So if all the glaciers melted and the water went up several hundred meters, so much of the civilization from the past is gone. So it's almost like we had to start over again. And our history starts 3,000 years ago with some philosophers with some great ideas. And we kind of described it as the beginning of civilization. But when you look into it, there's a lot more history to it.
Yeah, it's very complex on this planet, I think, So many different races and this interaction with extraterrestrials and then not again, and cataclysms. So we don't know our past, We just know a little bit. And also there's so much. My history teacher in the US always said, the victor writes the history. So, it's not unbiased or balanced, And and that becomes history, what the victor writes, And so like the Romans, when they lost, they said like the Germans were barbaric and huge guys and so on. They were actually not. And so just to sweep their defeat under the carpet, kind of. So, and that in Egypt, emperors were or pharaohs were kind of threatened that they're deleted from history, if they didn't comply,
A group that might be considered terrorists, if they win the war, then they're the heroes.
Yeah.
They become the heroes.
Right.
And
in America,
if they lose, they're the terrorists. They're the terrorists.
Yeah. George Washington was basically a terrorist. And his group.
Yeah.
From England's point of view.
Exactly.
But then they won, and then, they were the great founding fathers.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
that's how it flips.
Yeah.
And it's, in the end, there's hardly any good history books, and we know so little.
Yeah, so the information has been sort of controlled through time. And there might be even narratives, great narratives, that because in order to control large populations, you need to also get them to think in a particular way. So if there's any kind of knowledge that might threaten that theory or that idea, that might be suppressed. And so there is a lot of that in the history of the world. So if you want to kind of go deeper and like, what is it all about? Who am I? Sometimes you have to break through these barriers of knowledge and dig deep into the history, into the books, into what information is out there. And a lot of that information, from what I've discovered, came through a lot of the different spiritual lineages or teachings around the world. Somehow a bit of this knowledge has been preserved in their ancient books, and they tell these stories. And sometimes you can see the story being told maybe from an Indian perspective, and then you go to the Mayan culture and they have a similar story, and you go to the Jewish culture and there's some stories there, and you begin to see that as some kind of a universal story being told, about the past and about the history of the planet and the history of the earth.
Yeah. How did you find out about Billy?
Yeah. So it goes back to, I was born in Saudi Arabia, and then I moved to the Caribbean, a small island called Aruba, 18 miles off the coast of Venezuela, and that's where I grew up. And so I always had beautiful beaches and fish and swimming and lots of sunshine and nature around me. And on one day I was outside and I heard a strange humming sound, like some very strange humming sound. And I looked up into the sky, and a few hundred meters away was a silver disc gliding through the air silently with a hum. It didn't have an engine, didn't have anything. It was just gliding through the air, and I couldn't believe it. And I yelled out, and my neighbor came out, and we saw this together. And then this silver ship, kept gliding out towards the ocean, towards Venezuela. And wow, what was that? What was that? And then 10 minutes later, 2 Dutch Air Force, Navy propeller planes, not jets, were chasing in that direction. They had missiles on it, and they were chasing really fast in the direction of the UFO. And that's changed my thinking. And ever since then, I knew there was more to reality than I was being told. And ever since that day, I began to question reality and learn about stuff. And over that summer in our island, I remember sometimes even the kids, my friends, were aware of things, strange energy fields, and we'd be out at night and we'd look into the sky. It was like there was something going on. We didn't know what it was. But it's that time that I began to question reality and began to explore other ideas about what's going on or what's the nature of reality. And I always looked out towards space and with a big question mark. And so that's how it began for me,
Yeah. How old were you?
13.
Okay, still a kid. So it kind of didn't leave you, and then you investigated later, or how did you
No,
find out about it?
I always knew there was more. Maybe while a lot of people, maybe you're on the beach and running around, which I did also, but a lot of times I was dreaming. I was kind of thinking, like, Jan, come on, like, oh, okay, yeah, because I was always kind of in a space like this, So, and this led me to all over the world. I mean, I've been to India, Tibet, Egypt, the South America, Central America, investigating all these things, in all the different cultures and civilizations, I was actually living in Malibu, California, and somebody had the big picture book, written by, like Wendell Stevens and all these guys that were doing the research, about Billy. Immediately I began to think like, okay, I have to go there, And at the time I was married to a flight attendant, an airline stewardess, so it was easy for me to travel around the world. So I wrote a letter. To this. I found out where this center was, and I think this was in the early 80s. I don't remember anymore. I think it was maybe 83, maybe something like that.
The book came out, I think, around that time. Yeah.
And by the way, I've had 3 or 4 copies of the book, and they've all been stolen by people. Every time I show the book to somebody, and all of a sudden it disappears. So, but I still have a copy now. But So I was going on to India, and so I had some tickets. I used to buy tickets that went like, I could go this way around the world and that way around the world and this way around the world, and I could buy them all for 10% fare, and then I would just be in the flow. And I would be somewhere, and I would go like, okay, it feels like I have to go this way, and then I would use this ticket. And when I was in Rome, I called my wife in California. She said, "Oh, a letter has arrived from Schmidrueti, and they said you can visit." And so I didn't go to India. I went to Schmidrueti, and so that's how I got here. Yeah, the first time.
Yeah, yeah. Tell about how was that, because that was still very much in the beginning, and so very different. I know little, or some about it, but actually very little about that time. So, just whom did you meet, or
yeah,
what
I
was
made good friends with Guido Moosbrugge, and he invited me to his house in the Bodensee, so I spent some time with him there. Yeah, I met a lot of the early people around, and one thing I didn't tell you is that when I was in Egypt, I met a Swiss guy. He invited me to Switzerland if I ever came, because I told him I might be going, and it's his father that drove me to Schmidrueti. And that caused a lot of people, they were from Kloten, so a lot of people from Kloten ended up becoming part of the center, and they became to visit here. All these people came through that, and you still have some people living here or connected that are with that initial group of people.
What did you do, or who else kind of, or what do you remember?
I remember, we did Hoya, and, working in the fields and different things, yeah, it was more like, whatever was happening at the center, like pouring cement or digging holes or, gardening, whatever they wanted to do. That's what we did in that time. Of course, I was always inquiring and inquisitive and, had pictures and books. I did all of that, and eventually even became a member of the Figu and began taking the spirit lessons, and explored a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Did it make a big difference to the books, or how would you describe?
I would say that I get more through meditation than through books. What that is I close my eyes and connect with my own life force and find well-being, or, in my own Lebenskraft, my own life force. And I find that gives me the clarity, and that gives me the most, because a lot of these things are ideas, a lot of ideas. So I find more energy in that, more connection in that.
That's actually the best way, because you can only know through experience.
I will say, though, that that connecting with, the Semjase Silver Star Center and Billy Meier has also helped me to become more universal, or a citizen of the universe, in a sense, because of the way Billy frames everything. It's all nature, it's all the creation. And so that's helped me a lot in that way, even though I had a lot of the mystical tools, to make a connection. But his explanation of everything also helped me to increase my understanding of who I am, and the creation itself,
How long did you work with them, or how long did you stay?
Well, I've been to the Figu, or to the center here, probably 20 times, 25 times, maybe more.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, we used to sit and meditate, because I know you have a pyramid, and we used to sit and meditate, in a circle.
Yeah.
I've done all that, did Salome meditation and Pentra at one point, we did all of that. And I got to know some of the people here a bit, because you work, when you work in the center, you work with all the different people, and you're doing things, carrying wood or whatever you're doing. So it was a good experience, But I don't feel that I was path for me was to move into something, or to, because even in America I had children, and I had a life there. I was living in America.
You had your life somewhere else.
And
so core group was not your calling.
But I mean, it was at one point. I seriously considered it. Absolutely. And even at one point, I was living in Switzerland for a few years, also.
You said you were in Egypt, and you were also in the pyramid.
Yeah.
Can you tell about that?
Yeah, well, this happened before I came the first time to the Semyasi Silver Star Center. I told you I went to Egypt maybe early in the morning, and there was no security, so I actually just went into the Giza Pyramid and spent 5 or 6 hours inside the King's Chamber. And it was an interesting experience in the sense that, I mean, just reflecting on the history of the place is one thing, but the second thing was that that when I was in there, I would just turn off the flashlight and I would just sit in the darkness and meditate and just see what I could feel or what I could experience. And then every now and then a group of tourists would come in, and then all of a sudden there'd be a lot of noise and pictures and people talking, and then it would be gone again, and then I would be in absolute silence sitting in the middle of the pyramid. And
it's absolute silent in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't hear anything.
No,
yeah.
Other than my own thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. And absolute darkness, of course, you know, which you don't even have outside, even at night, you don't have absolute darkness, you know, so that's,
I've done this also in a Mayan pyramid in Palenque, the Pakal Votan. You ever see this picture of is the Maya, like you listen to Von Daniken, is the Mayan flying a spacecraft? And he shows you a picture of a stela of a Mayan. In there, inside the tomb, I also, one time at night, I opened up a Mayan tomb and went all the way down, 160 steps all the way down to the center of the tomb, and sat in there and meditated and had a very powerful experience. Yeah.
Can you tell about it?
Yeah. So I was sitting there meditating, and for quite a long time, and just meditating, and just centering, and then all of a sudden something went like this, and then I was flying across the world. I could almost like a bird or an eagle. I could fly over the world and see things. That's what happened. Yeah. So I had this experience in that Mayan pyramid, yeah.
So like an extra body experience.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, didn't happen in the Egyptian pyramid, but it did happen in the Mayan pyramid.
Yeah. Did you have there an experience too in Egypt or?
In the Egyptian pyramid, no. Other than that, when I explored all of the Egyptian museum and all of everything connected with the pyramids, I found a small Egyptian, like a scribe. I don't know if you know what a scribe is. Like a priest, Egyptian priest, and he had a special clothing, and he had some scrolls, and I somehow identified with that. Somehow I went, yeah, I can, somehow that feels something I'm connected with,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you seem to follow like an intuitional path. Of course, we evolve step by step. So, but there are these steps where it's like a little faster, and then we kind of plateau.
Yeah, I call it.
Then,
yeah,
and then a step again.
Yeah.
And these stepping, kind of, that are usually often connected to some concrete experience.
Yeah.
And or, of course, it's always a personal thing. But if you could tell us about that a little, that would be
I relate to
interesting
the plateauing part.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what happens is you do a lot of spiritual work, and then you realize you need to change, but maybe you're not ready to change. So then you plateau. And the plateauing is more like that you can have more well-being and suffer less. But in order to suffer less, you also have to give something up sometimes. And if you're not ready to give that up, then I call that plateauing. But yeah, no, the journey has been really, you see, like it's all about what you can feel, and so I operate very much from a feeling point of view, and that's what guides what I do in a way. And for example, I can tell you, when you meditate, you feel well-being and freedom. When you close your eyes and you meditate, you can feel absolute freedom inside and well-being and joy and bliss. You can feel this inside yourself. And when I discovered the American Bill of Rights and the Constitution, they say that you have these unalienable rights, these rights given to you by nature, the right to life, liberty, and happiness. And that's a political statement, but that's actually what I experienced in meditation. So that made me become political. And so then I began to support candidates in America because I'm actually a Dutch citizen living in America and I can't vote. But what I could do is I could support candidates. And so I began to support the idea of sovereignty, your sovereignty, which is your life, liberty, and happiness, which is your inner sovereignty, which is your citizenship in nature itself. You're a sovereign being in nature. And I began to support candidates who would give more democracy or more sovereignty, or even especially the idea that you find here in Switzerland, which is direct democracy, which is, again, the citizen, the sovereign citizen, expressing their will by generating initiatives and referendums to actually create the future that's beneficial to them. So I believe in sovereignty and freedom and liberty, and so I support that, and that's come from meditation, and that meditation has become a political activity for me as well.
Yeah, you just mentioned like direct democracy in Switzerland, and people in Switzerland might be more aware of it, but in the world probably not so much. So can you tell us about that? It's not everywhere in Switzerland, so maybe you can.
Well, I remember when I was in Washington, D.C. once, I had a friend named Zen. That was his name, and we traveled around Central America together. And one time, he bought a whole truckload of Guatemalan clothes, really cool Indian clothing and stuff, and he was bringing it to Montreal. And we were driving through Washington, D.C., and the truck broke down. Lights didn't work, so we couldn't drive at night. So we just spent the night in Washington, D.C. And then it was like 3 or 4 in the morning. And I said to my friend Zen, I said, let's go have a look at the Capitol. The actual Congress, where the Senate and the Congresses, where they all meet, and it's a beautiful square building with a dome on it, and then some statue reaching out to heaven, like an angel on top of it, And I was saying to my friend Zen, I was saying, wouldn't it be incredible if every time before they passed a law that all of the politicians would just take a few minutes to meditate and connect with the truth in themselves, and then decide if what the right decision is on the law that they're passing. And while we were talking about this and imagining this, all of a sudden a green meteorite appeared in the sky and just streaked right over the top of the Capitol, and we were like, wow, that must be a sign. And so when I got involved in politics. That was always my memory, that to promote democracy and freedom and liberty, and meditation. So actually, I discovered direct democracy through a friend of mine, a Swiss friend, and I always believed in it, and I came here to experience it. And then I got involved in promoting it. Actually, I live in Ireland. I began to promote direct democracy. MEP in the European Parliament found out about it, and they invited me to the European Parliament, and I began to work with direct democracy in the European Parliament, and we created an organization called Democracy International to promote direct democracy worldwide. And then I became involved in politics more and more and more, and actually ran for the European Parliament and talked to the people in Ireland about direct democracy and sovereignty. But the root of all of this is meditation. The root of it is a spiritual connection to the creation itself. That's where it comes from.
Yeah. What is your experience with kind of the spirituality also, or spiritual awareness in like Brussels or in politics in general?
Well, what I was hoping was that I could get to the European Parliament and I could teach them all how to meditate.
That would have been great.
Yeah, I wanted to teach them how to meditate. Yeah.
But it didn't work out.
No, it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
But the thoughts of direct democracy have been planted in the minds of millions of people, because I've spoken directly to them about this,
There's also a movement here in Switzerland where this is actually applied, isn't it? The direct democracy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was just recently in Glanerland for the Landsgemeinde.
Yeah.
And there the politicians, all the people come, And I think there were 10,000 people sitting in the square of Glarus, and the politicians were talking about the laws that they want to implement, local canton, and so they began to speak about it, and then people could ask questions about it, and other people could speak about it, and they could modify it, and the people would vote. And so this is a place where the people are actually creating their own destiny. There's no media interfering and telling people how to think. This is people thinking for themselves, speaking directly to the people and to the politicians and agreeing on a future that they want to create. That's true freedom. That's true liberty. That's real sovereignty. And that's what I want. I wish this for the world, especially if it's grounded in spirituality, because people don't want to create a destiny for themselves that is full of pain and failure, right? People want success and well-being and happiness, So if you give the people, not the politicians who want to maintain power, but the people themselves a chance to create their own reality, their own destiny, then they're always going to create one that's good for themselves. And that's really what a democracy is, because before, the kings and queens were the rulers of the country, and they were the sovereign power. But when you had your revolution, then the people became the sovereign power. But how can 1 million people or 5 million people organize themselves to create their destiny? Well, they do it through a constitution. And so that's why they vote every year, because every year the people themselves give a bit of their sovereignty and agree to elect somebody to represent them, to utilize the resources of the state to improve the lives of the people of the state. That's right.
But this in Glarus is even a step further. Mm-hmm. It's because anything can be put up. You don't have so many signatures, do you?
No, it's not like a referendum or an initiative. But see, the beauty of initiative and referendum is this. Imagine your country is like a big ship, and the politicians and the leaders are the ones that are steering the ship, right? And maybe the direction that your country is going is creating great pain and suffering for the people. And the beauty of initiatives and direct democracy is that the people can say, hey, wait a second, I don't agree with the direction that you're taking the country. And the politicians say, oh, be quiet, we don't care what you think. And the people can then have an initiative and gather the 100,000 signatures and say, yes, we think this and we want to make a decision on this. Then the parliament can say, well, okay, we agree with you. We will change the law and take this new direction. Or they say, no, we don't agree with you. And then you have a referendum in the country where the people decide the outcome. And that's the beauty of it, And that's on a national level, on a federal level, and also on a local level here in Switzerland. That's what's so incredible about this country. It's one of the most amazing things. And if you live in this country, you'll see how organized everything is. Everything works. The train system works. The hospitals work. The school system is good. The medical system is good. It's clean. When people have more control over their country, they create a beautiful country, and Switzerland is an example of this. So I see Switzerland as a highly evolved nation, and as an example of how the world could be in a way.
Yeah, but that starts to change also with, let's look at the neutrality that has been taken away basically just by a few politicians, with the sanctions. The Russia doesn't see Switzerland as a neutral country anymore, and other countries might follow there, because of the sanctions.
There was a group of people meeting for that very problem, because they're saying that Switzerland is veering away from the original interpretation of the Constitution.
Absolutely.
And they are organizing themselves to be able to bring Switzerland back on its original path.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of democracy.
Yeah. I really hope they succeed, because that is, for example, I don't remember the year, but there were 2 Swiss captured in Afghanistan, I think it was, and because Switzerland was neutral, I think they got away, So the money was paid, and then they were released, And very sure that because Switzerland is a neutral country, they thought they might have caught Americans or so, and wanted to. It was all about the money anyway. But if they wouldn't have been seen as Swiss and with this neutral country, politically neutral, there was much less incentive to kill them in the end, And
right.
and I think people are not aware of that. That makes a huge difference. And,
it does.
And this is they're not aware that if you go as a Swiss person now, the war will be over at some point, and then you also traveling to Russia again. When you go to Russia as a Swiss person, then you cannot say anymore. It's not the same anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
You're not from a neutral country anymore. You're from one of the countries that sanctioned your country, and from a Russian point of view.
That's right.
And that's a huge difference,
That's true.
And also it obstructs trade massively, of course, and it always hits just the populace and not Putin or so, or the Kremlin. And also that, for example, everybody wants to trade with China, and that they say, we can affect most likely change in China through trade, which they can't really. But anyway, still they do. But in the case with Russia, they don't want to trade anymore, and it's even more hurtful, with the sanctions. Let's say we would sanction all China, we would be worse off, and the Chinese would be worse off, And of course, the Chinese are kind of exploiting technologically the West, by copying everything and so on, And so it's also a sellout by the corporations to China, But still, it's still better than if we would sanction China, for example.
Well, I don't think it's really the people making the decisions. Sure, the people are choosing the leaders, but I think that what you have is like a billionaire class, and they control a lot of the media corporations, and they control a lot of industry and things, and war is good for business.
Yeah.
And so if you're a politician who comes out against it, then they get attacked by the media. And politicians also have families and houses and rent to pay and everything. So there's a lot of fear in the world. And so, for example, if you look at COVID, every politician was afraid to say, any politician who said, no, we don't believe in the lockdowns and we don't believe in all this control, they were attacked, viciously attacked, incredibly attacked. And but the moment that the information came out that it wasn't so bad anymore and we understood, then all of a sudden the politicians began to change everything because they didn't have to be afraid to come out and say something about it, right? So it was okay to say now, oh no, you don't need to wear masks, and you don't need a vaccination now, because it's all about the media and the control. Yeah. It's the same thing with war, because war is good for business. When America declares war and they go, we're going to give the Ukrainians $100 billion, maybe 10 billion of it actually gets to Ukraine, 90 billion is weapons, and that 90 billion goes from the government bank account to the bank account of the manufacturers of the weapons. Yeah. And then that goes to Ukraine, and then it blows up. So when it's gone and it blows up, then of course you need more money to buy more stuff.
Yeah.
If you're building stuff and paying for stuff that's going to last 30 years, that's not good business. But if you build things that blow up, then that cost $1 million each, that's good business because you have to keep renewing it. So the unfortunate thing is, so that a bunch of really powerful people can make a lot of money, you have to sacrifice the lives of a lot of people on the altar of war so that people can make money. It's almost like the money changers in the temple with Jesus when he said, no, this is bullshit. And they had a big argument, and eventually they put him on a cross. So at least that's the theory. At least that's what I read in the books. I wasn't there, so I don't know, but that's the story you hear.
Yeah.
In a sense, so I always think it's kind of crazy that the lives of so many people have to be sacrificed. That people are so insensitive, they don't care about the life of a human, and that business is more important. Or if you're an activist and you threaten their $1 billion business that they make revenue every year, if they can't cancel you, they can't shut you up, then all of a sudden, you have an accident, and so there's a lot of this in the world,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever been threatened or experienced in that way that people came and you better be quiet about this or that?
Actually, in Colombia, once I was sitting cross-legged on a public bench, and a soldier came and told me that wasn't the proper way to sit. And I said, no, I can sit like this if I want. Then he pulled out his machine gun and aimed it at me, and then I sat normally. So that's the only time I've ever been threatened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an abuse of power. It's an abuse of power.
Massive abuse of power.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. People in authority begin to forget that they're representing a constitution in a way. They begin to think that when they make a decision that's sort of the constitution, that they are the law. Yeah. But in a sense, they forget that, and that's one of the tragedies, that people forget the fact that they represent the Constitution, and it's not them just deciding what it is, and that this is now the law. You have to stay aligned to the principles of a Constitution.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then this is ignored more and more. There's let's say Iraq war, it was a big lie, 2003, they knew they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. What happened afterwards? Nothing. Nobody went to jail or so.
Yeah.
And this massive abuse of power, it gets worse and worse, and it's really bad that this money buys more and more power in politics,
And and that's the problem, because that's the stage we are at this life, because people don't understand that they don't have the spiritual awareness, or they haven't done the work on themselves to realize who they are in creation itself. And when you look at the Plejaren and what they represent, they also talk about there was a time of great confusion and way back 50,000 years ago or whenever it was, and then they finally decided, well, what is peace? And then let's really understand what is peace. And then they began to modify their civilizations. And now they are so far advanced, because you see, if you are a powerful technological civilization and you have a deep spiritual awareness, then you can have the most powerful weapons and you don't destroy yourself with it. You can have the most powerful technology that'll enable you to travel the universe and to meet other cultures and other civilizations and learn from everything and to progress and evolve. But if you're an immature civilization, you have this powerful technology, you end up, and people want power and control, then you end up destroying yourself. So in a sense, the spiritual work that you're doing, that we are doing, in a way, is helping to evolve the culture, so that eventually we can get to a point where we can have high technology and high spiritual evolution, and continue on, evolving into the universe and making contact with our space brothers and sisters, right? In a way, yeah.
Tell me about the beginning of when you were here in Figu and your experiences, etc.
I wrote a letter to the Figu, and then eventually the Figu invited me to come, and so I came to the Figu. And of course, because I told you a little bit about my UFO experiences. I mean, even out throughout my life, even after 1965, 66, I don't remember exactly, when I was around 13, this happened. Many times I would look at the sky. There was a period of maybe a few months when I was living in Malibu that I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would go outside and look at the sky, and then it's always a point of light would appear in the sky. It just, like, all of a sudden something would appear, and then it would streak across the sky. And I did that for a couple of months. I would just go out there at 5 o'clock in the morning. I look at the sky, and something would appear, and it would fly across. And I had all kinds of experiences like that, but they were not that important to me, because they were just dots of light and specks of light in the sky. I wanted something like you and me sitting here together. I said, I have to go find out what's going on. Because even before that, I'd been traveling around. If I'd learned something about something cosmic or UFO related, I would fly to another part of the world to investigate that. So on my own, I did that. So eventually, I wanted to investigate the Schweiz, the Semjase Silver Star Center in Switzerland. So I came here, and of course, pictures and all of this, the standard stuff. But I was always interested in the spirituality of it. See, for me, I didn't need to be convinced that UFOs existed. I wanted to know how do they see the universe? What is the spirituality of the people who fly the ships? And so that's what I was always very interested in. And so my knowledge, my yearning for knowledge was always trying to find out, well, how do they think? Well, how do they see the universe? What is spirituality? How do they meditate? How do their machines work? I was always more interested in that. And you didn't need to prove anything to me because I already knew that it was real. I just wanted to know more about the culture and everything. Eventually, I was sent, and this is in the early 80s, I was sent back to America, and they said, you need to contact a lady named Roberta Brooks. And then she gave me a copy of the contact notes. That's what I had to start reviewing. So that's what I did. I have friends who promoted a big New Age gathering conference in Los Angeles called the Whole Life Expo. And I think even Guido went to one of the Whole Life Expos. I told Roberta, I said, okay, I'm going to create a booth. We were selling books. I can't remember exactly what we were selling. Through that, we promoted the first meeting after the conference about the Pleiadian and the Pleiades information, and that was in L.A., and we promoted that. That's what we sold. And so through that, a lot of people came, of course. And so that first meeting we had, which was in a yoga center in Beverly Hills, I believe it was, we had maybe 100 people, maybe more, I don't remember exactly. And then she was to give the presentation, and everybody was there to find out about the Pleiades, right? But the thing about it was, we met everybody there, and in that group was Randy Winters. And so I met Randy Winters, and then Randy Winters asked if he could have a copy of the contact notes. And I said no, because Roberta Brooks had only given it to me to not give to anybody else. It was only for me. And but then he said he went back to Roberta Brooks, and I can't remember exactly, but I was then told to give him a copy. And then once he got the copy, then he began promoting it. Randy Winters became more into prominence. And I never was promoting anything. I was only interested in the spiritual information. So that's what I always did. I was always in the background. When I was traveling, the Swiss guy I met from Kloten, he was in trouble. Somebody stole his wallet. And he was in Egypt, had no money, and I just said, okay, and I opened my wallet, and I gave him a whole bunch of money. And then I left, and he left, and eventually I met him in Switzerland again. And then the people from the Dorfli all came to see me because I helped him in Egypt, right? And they all loved me, and they became friends with me. So all these people eventually got involved in the Semjase Silver Star Center. And so because I had this ability to fly to Switzerland and stay in Zurich or in Kloten and go visit the Figu, and then stay in Zurich and visit the Figu, I could do all of this stuff. And Randy Winters wanted to come. We drove him here to the center, and then I walked ahead and told Billy he was coming, and spoke with him for a minute. And then I said, Billy, this is Randy Winters. Made the connection, and then I walked away. And then the history continues.
Yeah. You also had kind of special experience in 88 or when it was?
I was working in the world's busiest computer store at the time. And the manager of the store was a good friend of mine, and we went to go see the movie Alien.
Yeah.
And we were driving back to my house talking about flying saucers and everything because I have knowledge of this. And when we came to my house, there was probably maybe 150 meters, 200 meters above the house was a disc hovering there. And we couldn't believe it. And my friend was like, "Wow, I can't believe it," And so I immediately, knocked on the door and went into my house, and my daughter was in the living room, and then she came out and was standing with my friend, and then my wife at the time was sleeping, And I was calling into the house. I was in the living room, and she kind of came out like sleepy like this, and like, oh, I was having this incredible dream, and I felt like I was communicating with something, and I don't know what's going on. And while we were in the living room talking, my friend and my daughter all of a sudden went like this, went, whoa, whoa. And what happened was the ship got bright orange like this, and then went and disappeared into the sky. And the other thing I didn't tell you is when I was walking up to the house with my friend and we saw it, I said telepathically to it, because I believe that they communicate this way. I said, it's nice that you're there, but you're in the sky. And to me, that doesn't do me any good. To me, that's just, that you're just hovering in the sky. Why don't you land somewhere and let me meet you? That was my information. That's how I spoke to it. And then about a year later, maybe 2 years later, I ended up here in the Figu on one of my trips to the Semjase Silver Star Center. I was working like you do here at the Semjase Silver Star Center. There's always a lot of work to do. And it was too late for me to go home, to Villa. And then you invited me to stay in the Wohnwagen. And so I had dinner with the folks, and then it was time to go to sleep. And so I went to the Wohnwagen. So I was just laying in the Wohnwagen on the bed, kind of a mattress, and kind of like thinking about the day. And then all of a sudden this energy hit me, like boom, like it just hit me, this force field. And what happened was that this force field went into my belly, and you can check with Billy, maybe he knows what this is, or I don't think I imagined it because I've never had an experience like this in my entire life. And what happened was this energy went into my belly button here, went through my body, and then out through my forehead, and then in through my forehead, through my body, and out through my belly. And it was going like this, almost like reading a disc, almost like they were reading something. And as this was happening, all these pictures about my life were just coming out of me, all these pictures. And so I was flopping up and down on the bed like this, as this energy was just going like this. I was just flopping up and down. And then all of a sudden the picture came up that I wanted to meet them, from that experience in LA, and then it stopped. And then all of a sudden, right above me, it just something opened up like this, like a square, like a screen like this. And there were a bunch of people on looked like a bridge of a ship. It wasn't like a small disc. It was like a bridge of a big ship. And they were standing there, and they were all kind of trying to get into the view of the camera. They all wanted to see me, and they wanted me to see them, and they were all kind of like doing this. And then what we did was I looked at them, and they looked at me, and we were smiling. That's what it was. And there was this like an energy going back and forth like this of just smiling and happiness. And we just did that for I don't know how long, a few minutes, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. And then it was over. And I got so excited, I jumped out of the Wohnwagen, and I went running up to the kitchen, and I opened the kitchen door, and Billy was, there's a staircase on this side, and he was sitting in the staircase like this. And I went, Billy, 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 like I just had this experience, thinking he would talk to me about it or say something about it. And he just kind of looked at me and shrugged his shoulders and turned around and went upstairs. And that was it. And I never really talked about it except with some personal friends. And that's what happened to me. So that's why I connect the two things, those two things, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, I have no idea either. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But what I do feel is that what happened was I experienced some type of technology, futuristic technology. How can you have a machine that can do that? They have a machine that works with life force, and somehow it was some kind of advanced technology. You know? And so
and who knows? Maybe it wasn't the player, and it sounds a bit
I don't know.
Strange. I think that whatever the player do, you don't even notice, and that's what Semjase says, they're in contact with many scientists and so on, even thousands of people on this planet, but they don't even, they cannot even register that there is this information exchange, or that they get this information, and it's not coerced, the information. This information is sent out so that they can receive it.
Yeah.
But what they do with the information is up to them.
I somehow I do feel that they have an ability, when you have a thought form, they have an ability to see that. I believe they can see that. And what I noticed,
in the contact reports, there's a device Semyaza showed to Billy, and they talk about some, I think, core group member.
Yeah.
And I'm not absolutely sure, but I think it's a core group member. And Semyaza shows him, I think there's kind of a symbol form or so, and then you can interpret that. And then they see, okay, you see, he's kind of thinking that, or
yes.
he's feeling like that, and so on, and then they can make they can look very deep
this is what they can
you.
do. This is what they can do. See, and I had this in the dreams. Sometimes before I came here to Schmidrueti, I remember having dreams, and somehow I began to have, they introduced, somehow something was being introduced into my dream. And what they were interested in was how I dreamt about it, because how I dreamt about it told them something about how I would act in the world. And so I saw these, and I saw this. I knew there was, because I'm a deep meditator. I'm sometimes aware that I'm sleeping and that I'm dreaming. I can sometimes be aware
dreaming.
of that. Yeah, but I'm aware that I'm dreaming.
Yeah, that means lucid, it's called lucid dreaming.
Yeah, and so sometimes I've seen beings or some type of astral something where they somehow introduce, or they observe me, or even when they're observing me, sometimes I observe them observing me, and they don't even realize that I'm doing it, and all of a sudden they understand it, and then all of a sudden it breaks. But I've seen this before, and I always felt that on some level they introduced dream symbols into my dream to see how I would dream about them, to see if maybe they had some work that needed to be done, or something that needed to be done, and they needed to find someone to do the work. So what they do is they find different people. In my case, they introduce dream symbols to see how I would dream about them, and that would tell them something about who I am and how I would act. And I've always felt that.
Yeah, I asked Billy about it, because dreams are also important part in the Geisteslehre, For example, when you die, the dream state is maybe closer to how it is when you're not have a physical body anymore than anything else, And if you can, lucid dreaming, if you can control your dream, this is helpful to control, to have, let's say, to have basically a good death, and a good transition, because you have more awareness, when your state changes, Usually when you fall asleep, you're just unaware and unconscious, and you feel like things happen to you, not being aware that it's not reality,
I've always worked with my dreams, because I read a long time ago that sometimes you can have a repeating dream, a dream that comes over and over again, maybe in this dream you're in a foggy night and there's somebody walking towards you, and then all of a sudden you become afraid. Well, the thing that you do is, if you begin to work consciously with dreams, what you do is you actually try to say, okay, no, I'm not going to be afraid, and I'm going to try to meet who it is. And so I used to have a UFO dream that used to repeat. And every time I would dream about a UFO, I would wake up and I had that UFO dream again. I should ask it for a ride. Again, I didn't ask it for a ride. So one day I had the dream again, and then I asked it for a ride. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I was on a street, and the UFO was hovering in a cul-de-sac, and the UFO was hovering there, and I said, "Oh, UFO, please come here." And then the UFO went over to me, and I said, "May I touch you?" And then I touched the UFO, and immediately it was like a time machine. And I was transformed into another world. where I was in a paradisical world, like a beautiful, full of nature world. So I work with dreams like that.
Yeah.
To work with it. Like if there's a closet, you open the door. Like
Yeah.
you try to go outside and look around. So you can progress your dream, and like I used to always have a dream where I would get on a public bus, but I would be naked. So the bus would come and I would get on the bus and the doors would close, and then also the bus would take off and I go, oh my God, I'm naked, and there's full of people, right? So one time I was at an Indian festival with American Indians, and they were doing sweat lodges. Everybody was naked. So you have all these sweat lodges, and what they were doing is they were doing like a ceremony, a vision quest ceremony. What happens is that people get into an arbor, and you have maybe 50 people in an arbor, and then you have drummers all day, and they don't drink water, and they don't eat for 3 days, and then and you make music with the drum, and they go out and dance, and then they collapse, and they have a vision, and then you carry them, and you take care of them for 3 days. And so, but before you do that, you have a purification ritual where you do lots of sweat lodges. And so you have 10 people sitting in a sweat lodge with hot rocks and steam. And so we were doing that. And then we were going to have a dinner afterwards where they were eating buffalo, buffalo dinner. And so I was going to take a shower before I was going to go to the dinner. And so I walked over to the showers naked and to take a shower. They had these showers there. And my daughter was there. Her name is Ananda Lira. And she said, oh, Dad, let's go to the dinner. And I had just finished the shower, so I ended up walking into the dinner completely naked with fully dressed people, right? And so it was like my dream. And while I was walking into the dinner, it was like, am I dreaming or is this real? It was exactly like the dream. So that was a very powerful moment where I realized there was no difference almost between the dream time and the real time. Because actually when you're thinking, you're dreaming. You know what I mean? So this is all like dream time. So the real time and the dream time somehow connected there, and it was very powerful.
Yeah, it can mix up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And then you don't know, did I dream that or did it really happen to me?
Exactly.
Things, certain memories, and I just don't know.
But then on some level, a dream time is also a level of reality.
Yeah.
Because what you can do, you might be able to make contact with other parts of the universe through that dream time or through that mechanism.
Yeah, the connection to the body is not so strong, and you can like you can fly in your dream or so, and it feels like you're really flying, and explore the world or whatever you experience here.
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing about dream yoga or lucid dreaming.
I remember once I was in the Himalaya, and I was walking to Gangotri and to a place called Gaumuk. And Gaumuk is like a 1 day's walk from a small village high up in the Himalayas, and that's the source of the Ganges River. It's a huge glacier, maybe a few kilometers across and a few hundred meters high. And from that glacier comes a river, that's the Ganges, So I was out there. And there's a hostel near there where I was spending the night. And it was around 4 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up, and I decided to open up the windows. And I could see it was like the moon and the Himalaya, and the star Sirius was rising. And a voice came in my head. It said, meditate on the light of Sirius and then sleep, and you will have great dreams. So I just sat there and I was receiving the light from Sirius, and then I just kept receiving it, and then I went, okay, and I closed the windows, and then I just went to sleep, and then I started dreaming. And I ended up in a civilization like out of Star Wars, some kind of advanced, city, with flying cars and all of this kind of stuff. And I had this, And what woke me up in the dream was that the beings in this place discovered me, and they brought me into a laboratory. And they put me on a table like this, and they were all standing around the table looking at me, and all of a sudden I went, whoa! And all of a sudden I just woke up, it was like this. It was something like this, And so that's the dream time, it can be quite extraordinary,
Yeah. And that is for these alien abduction scenarios or so. People and often don't know, was it a dream, was it real, and so on, So it becomes and these people have had some experiences, it's so but it's in most cases it's not extraterrestrials, we are far too boring, and they can check us out, like you said, in different ways. They don't have to. I mean, I think the Betty and Barney Hill, they were really abducted, and they were just medical experiments and so on, but they weren't harmed or so, and so they did experience some pain at some point or so in the procedure, but basically they came back unharmed, and but in this in America, especially in the United States, this abduction scenarios, it's terrible military operations, to scare the shit out of people. You can't say anything else.
I have a theory about that. So I have this theory that that maybe that the gray aliens are us from the future coming back, because somehow the world got controlled by corporations, and that all they didn't want us to have sex because that could take us away from working. And so we just became these working machines, and they bred out genetically all of everything that we need. So we needed a little bit of food, and we were working all the time. And so we evolved into these gray aliens. And so the gray aliens are us from a future reality coming back to try to recover some of the DNA so that they could regenerate themselves into humans again.
That's a great science fiction story.
Yeah, it is.
That would really make a great science fiction story.
Yeah.
But it's just actually the military has a term for it. It's extraterrestrial biological entity. So and that if you think about that explains it. It's a biological entity that is artificially made and not made on this planet.
Yes, like an android almost.
Yeah, exactly. They are biological androids, and that makes a lot of sense, Send out your androids so you don't get killed,
Yes, of course.
If you explore the universe, that's very dangerous to travel in space, We think we have this naive thinking of we are safe on this planet, and wherever we go, we will be like welcomed, and so that's very unlikely. And just to bridging the distances, it's not traveling through hyperspace. It's not a piece of cake.
It's like an advanced,
very dangerous, and many people will die before we successfully do that.
Absolutely, it's like an advanced android. Like today, we're developing AI, and we have artificial general intelligence. We're getting close to it. Open AI, and I've interacted with it. I can talk to it, and it comes back with quite interesting concepts. So if you combine that intelligence with a robot, and eventually put flesh on it, and create a creature like that, you could send that creature into space to investigate and explore for you, and to bring back information, of course. Makes sense.
And then at a later point, you don't build a skeleton or so anymore. You grow it biologically. Cloning and stuff like that, gene manipulation. And then that's easy. And then in the future, and then you can even humans, you can program thoughts, false memory syndrome and stuff like that. So you can plan the intelligence or the level of intelligence you want in it, and then send it out, And what was your is your conclusion? What they want, or
who wants
the Plejaren or the extraterrestrials? What's your kind of
conclusion?
Conclusion on that question?
I mean, my understanding of it is that they arrived on this planet they affected the evolution of this planet. And so somehow they're responsible for the planet, and they have gone through different types of evolution themselves, and where they were also warlike at one point, but now they've come to the point where they found inner peace and peace within their culture and political peace, and that they now can use their resources, all their technology and all their science to improve their own lives, and also to explore the universe, to learn more about other cultures and other civilizations, to continue improving, almost like Star Trek, and that somehow they are somehow trying to, they see that Earth on some level is not in balance, and that somehow they're trying to influence us through different teachings, through telepathic communication with different people, that all of a sudden somebody might get a great idea and invent something or write something, but ultimately behind it is their inspiration, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to move the culture along so that somehow we can heal ourselves and find balance, and then join all of the civilizations in the universe and in the galaxy. And on some level, the work of the Semnyase Silver Star Center is to somehow communicate that knowledge to all who are ready to hear it, and to then and to help progress or to move that along. And in a sense, you can almost say it's also the Aquarian age manifesting, and that this is part of the teaching that is helping the Aquarian age to become, as it evolves and as we step into it, more and more light, more and more awareness, more and more understanding, more and more alignment with the truth, as human beings living here, Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
It was a pleasure, yeah.
And I hope we will meet again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, cheers.
Thank you, Jan.
All right.